Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Family Reflections. I'm your host, Keddy Emmanuel. I am here today with Amanie Mathurin. I actually went to school with Amanie a long time ago.
Yes, a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm really happy and proud to see the way that her story has kind of played out ever since. I remember seeing her as a young girl in Form 3 at Vieux Campus B. So yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm excited to have you here. Amanie, can you tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself so that they can kind of get up to speed?
Okay, thank you, Keddy, and thank you for having me, first of all. Okay, that's always a tough question to answer. A little bit about myself, because I feel like there's so many different components.
Right, right.
Um, I think mainly I was recently a reporter in television news. I recently made the very, very difficult decision to walk away from that. And now I'm pursuing more of my freelance writing and working on creative writing. So I'm on the way, hopefully, to publishing my first book sometime early next year.
Oh, cool. That's very cool. So it sounds to me like you have a passion for writing. When did that start? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think as far back as I can remember, I always loved writing because I have very vivid memories of me being in primary school, early primary school, and always having a notebook that I would just write very random things in. I still have stories I wrote from early primary school that looking back, I think I always knew. I remember even drawing a cover for what I thought would be one of my first books and coloring it. I think I always knew I wanted to write.
Okay. All right. That's really cool. So did this love for writing kind of segue or point to journalism? Um, how did that path come about?
Yeah, I think journalism wasn't always an obvious one for me because I went to school and I did media and international development, and it was more film. I really was passionate about film and I wanted to come home and do documentaries. But as soon as I graduated, there was a vacancy for a reporter, and I thought, I think I could be really good at this. And I read the responsibilities. I had friends in media, I spoke to them, and I thought, this could be a good way to get some really good experience in media before I eventually move on to film.
Okay. Oh, so I didn't know that about film. It sounds like,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we need to talk. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So I noticed a few months ago, I'm on Instagram, mindlessly scrolling, as we all do. I'm on Instagram and I came across L'Histoire, right? And I believe it's a collaboration between yourself and Trisha. Shout out to Trisha Lionel. Can you tell us a little bit about L'Histoire?
Well, actually, L'Histoire is a project that came about from two persons I met on Twitter, actually, like the power of social media. I
Right.
saw Xenia tweeting about an idea she had for a collection of stories she wanted to do from young Caribbean writers. And when I saw her tweet, I thought, wow, this is really good. I want to get involved. So I reached out to her and I brought Trisha on board as well. And there was a fourth member, Danielle. So, the four of us, we kind of brainstormed, we came up with this idea for a collection that focused on stories from the pandemic. So, how the pandemic affected young people in the region, things like relationships, money, death, all of these kind of topics. So Trisha and I were involved in the very early stages in helping them, like, conceptualize the project and get it off the ground. We're not directly tied with them now, but I would encourage everybody to get the book that came out recently. It's called 6 Feet Apart. It's available
Okay.
on Amazon, and it is a wonderful and very different collection.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds really cool. And kudos to you guys for helping catalyze the founding of that and really helping them get
Yeah,
that off the ground.
it was very
Um,
exciting.
oh yeah, I can imagine. Folks, I'll tell you what I'm going to do in the caption of this video, right up here somewhere. You'll see a link to at least the Listwa Instagram page. Do they have any other place that I can go?
We have a Twitter page as well. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll definitely get the Twitter link from Amanie as well as the Instagram and go check that out. Okay. Go check that out. Show your support. I it's hard to say that I have a passion for writing because that's so new to me. I wasn't aware that I did. But I wrote this book called George Road, which is really me taking my experience ever since I was a little boy growing up in this oven and being inspired by novels such as Miguel Street and Green Days by the River,
Oh, okay.
and those things really inspired me as a young secondary school age boy. And so I took those things and carried them forward into George Road.
That
So
sounds really interesting.
yeah, so yeah, there's George Road, and also, folks, shameless plug, Shantae's World
Yep.
is gonna be accompanied by a novel. So you're gonna hear me saying that over and
Okay.
over again. Yeah, so watch out for that. I'm actually proofreading
Nice.
the final copy of that right now. So
Nice. That's
yes,
exciting stuff.
yeah, so watch out for that, man. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. So anyway, reeling it back in. I wanted to kind of, I wanted you to give us a little bit of perspective into the world of journalism in St. Lucia, in terms of what are some unique challenges that journalists in St. Lucia face. All right. It's not often that we get to hear about, being a journalist. We hear from journalists a lot, but
Mhm.
we don't really get a peek behind the curtain.
Um, there's a lot to say. It would probably take us all day. But let me see the shortened version. It is thrilling and exciting, but very, very exhausting.
Mhm.
I did it for 3 years and I loved it. I met so many amazing people from all walks of life, and you learn so much, especially for me. I learned a lot about politics and law, about the labor code, like, things I never had an interest in before. So
Mhm.
I would say it's definitely very rewarding. It helps your personal and professional growth so much, networking, all of these things. But I think it's not as glamorous as people think it is. A lot of people see TV and they think, wow, this is all, just
Yeah.
glamour and all the good times and exciting things, and you get to rub shoulders all the time with people. But for me, and I think I've spoken to a lot of my colleagues who have this issue as well, it can be a very emotionally draining job, especially because of the types of stories that you cover. So I
Mm.
think the impact on mental health is one of the biggest challenges. And especially since, we live in a society where there's not always very affordable means of, getting support, getting assistance for these kind of things. And I think news is a job that never really stops. You're
Right.
never not working. So
Yeah.
you could be out on the road and people come up to you and talk to you about stories that you did or stories they think you should do. So you kind of never really get to step back enough and assess everything. So I would say I talk about this a lot because I think it's very important that people need to be aware of the impact that your job and anything in your life really has on your mental health and your emotional well-being. So that was one of the major reasons why I left.
Mhm.
I felt I had gotten to a point where I was just really, really tired. And as much as I loved what I did, it was taking too much of a toll on my mental health.
Right.
And I think we live in a small society. So the stories, it's hard. I know you have to disconnect and, keep a professional distance from things, but it's kind of hard to cover these stories day in, day out. You have stories of assaults, of murders, accidents, and of course, the very, very exhausting political drama. It's difficult to completely detach when these stories, there are real people behind them, and you interview a mother who's grieving the loss of her son, and you kind of just have to pack up your camera and walk away from that. But it's hard at the end of the night to just completely take that out of your mind.
Right. Oh yeah. I can only imagine. I'll actually I'll share a short story here. Um, I'm about 22, 23, and I've been in this car accident. There's some legal issues, and I'm at my lawyer's office, right? In Benton Harbor, Michigan. I'm at my lawyer's office, and I'm sitting there waiting, and this lady is crying. She's bawling. I'm talking snot, ugly crying on the floor, just completely broken. And my lawyer comes out and he's like, "Hey, I can see you now." And for a minute, I kind of paused because, like, oh, we're not going to
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to talk about the lady on the floor, you know? But I could tell that this man has been doing this for like 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he's seen this so often that
Mm-hmm.
he's mastered the ability to just completely detach and completely insulate. And it brings me back to our discussion here, where, you know, you're dealing with all these stories and pain and suffering and loss all the time, right? And I can imagine that it is difficult to create that level of insulation. And it's something that social workers have to do, and policemen, and people don't really realize that journalists have to do this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, kudos to you on being self-aware and really evaluating and seeing, okay, you know, there's some detriment to my mental health. I might need to step back. I can imagine, you know, that was not an easy decision there either.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely kudos on that. Now you mentioned that in the process of working in journalism, it can be particularly exhausting. I know we discussed the mental health aspect, but is there any other way that it could be exhausting? You kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, your work like it never really ends, right? People are walking up to you on the
Yeah.
street, but can you expound on that a little bit more?
I think it's a thing in St. Lucia with media workers. People always joke that, you know, we're overworked and underpaid, and it's very, very true. Media is not a high-paying job in St. Lucia. Many people might not think it, and it is, like I said, a very, very draining and very consuming job. But in many newsrooms, it's often a very small team. So
Mhm.
you have, you know, for example, my last newsroom I was in, it was basically myself and my other colleague, Nelsia, brilliant, brilliant young reporter. Um, you know, so it's kind of difficult and exhausting for two people really to be shouldering a lot of that responsibility. It's different in different newsrooms. Some you might have a team of 3, 4 reporters, you know, but the media landscape in St. Lucia, there's not like a very long list of journalists. If you look at television news, you see some of the same faces moving to different stations, but you know, it's a very small pool. So it can become very demanding when you're working in a very small newsroom and you don't have all the resources that you need.
Right, right. Okay. And I think most people imagine that it's a very large team, actually, where, you know, there's a whole group of people and
Yeah.
everybody's typing up scripts and, you know, it's a seamless chain, but it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense that
Yeah.
it's a small team, right? Can you kind of tell us how the team is broken out, like how responsibilities might be broken out on a day-to-day?
Okay, so normally for a newsroom, you would have a news director or news editor who would be in charge of the operations of the newsroom and, you know, planning the day out, deciding what stories you cover, who would cover what, who would go where. And you'd have 2 or 3 reporters, and you would have 2 or 3 cameramen slash video editors. So, you know, normally the day comes by and you meet in the morning and you see what are the hot topics for today. What are people talking about on social media? What happened yesterday? Who said something in the House of Parliament that was absolutely insane, you know? And you start to think of angles for stories and you decide, you know, this team will work on this. So this reporter, sometimes reporters kind of have their own niche. So a lot of people like politics, a lot of people like, you know, their sports stories, some people like human interests. So it's kind of based on who has an interest in what really. But also, I guess with our case, it was a little bit different. We were working without a formal editor for quite a while. So it was, you know, more Nelsie and myself, you know, just talking to the team, discussing what are the needs, what do we think needs to be in the newscast, and how do we get it there. So
Mhm.
I think you have to be very flexible, ready to adapt, because it's not the type of job where you come to work and you have a set workload every day and you know you have to file a specific amount of paperwork or nothing like that. It's kind of you make it up as the day goes along in a way.
All right.
So we could have a very detailed plan for what we want tonight's newscast to look like. And then at 2 o'clock, there could be a very huge accident somewhere, or there could be a shooting somewhere in town. So, you have to drop what you're doing right now, run to that, figure out how
Right.
you're going to put that into the newscast, rework things. So honestly, flexibility, number one skill.
I could imagine. It sounds to me like you're kind of like a finger on the pulse of the nation, you know?
Yeah.
And that finger is on the pulse every single day. And so you have to be able to pivot, right? And able to turn on a dime. Is that one of the ways that you could see that you grew out of this experience?
Definitely. Definitely. I think it helped me with that for sure. It also helped me come out of myself more. It made me a much bolder person. I think when I started news, I was very shy. My coworkers commented on it, and then within a couple of months, I found myself being this person that be asking tough questions, going up to people that I only knew from TV, politicians, other public figures, and, like grilling them and asking them questions. And people would look at me and be like, where do you get, the boldness to do this? I don't know. I feel like sometimes when you're in the field, it's like another person, like something just takes over and you just do what you have to do. So it definitely brought me out of my shell a lot.
Right. And that sounds really good. Is there any other takeaway or any other way that you see that you grew coming out of journalism?
I think I really understand people a lot more now. I've always been interested in, just people, how people think, how people react to things. Yeah. But being in a job like news for 3 years, I have met so many different people, like from every different, every little corner of life that I can imagine. And everybody brings their own perspectives. People teach me different things. Almost every person I've met, I think, taught me a little something. And definitely when you work in news and you get up close and personal with some of these stories and these people, you really start to get like really good insights into how people think, not just public officials, but, just everyday people as well.
Okay. And I agree. I can even say that in my short experience here on Family Reflections, just with the spectrum of people that I've had the opportunity to speak to, it's kind of like different flavors, right? You're getting a taste of the world, a taste of different opinions and worldviews, and speaking to smarter people than yourself, and people who have experienced things that you've never experienced. And it's a good time. I enjoy doing this. So
it is exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine that on the plane of actual network journalism, it's far beyond even what I've experienced here on Family Reflections. If you were to say, okay, this might be a tricky question, but learning about people and learning more about people, has that been overall positive, or were there some things that were also slightly disappointing as well?
Definitely there are some disappointing elements. I have this conversation with my friend a lot, Trisha, because she's also in media. And I tell that, growing up, there's a lot of people that we admired, a lot of people we looked up to because we knew them distantly. We knew them as what they were on television, the way they presented themselves. And then you kind of get more up close and you kind of realize that everybody's human. They're not as impressive as you might have thought. They have their own different set of flaws. So, you kind of learn to realize that people are different. They might not always live up to the expectations that you have. But I think it's one thing that's helped me just look at people as human beings. So they're not necessarily the politician. They're not the manager. They're a person at the end of the day.
Right. And I think that is profound. I think that's a really big deal and a really important thing for me to stress right now, because people, when as folks get into higher positions or they achieve different things, when we encounter them, sometimes we get starstruck, right?
Yeah.
You might meet a celebrity, or you might meet just somebody that you really admire, and your gut response is to see the person as this thing that they are to you, which may be the commissioner of police or the governor general of St. Lucia or prime minister or whatever it is. And in that moment, you kind of lose the humanity, right? The person is just a person. We're all just people, And I think it's a big deal for us to just all remember to we're all human, man. We're all
Yeah.
human. Don't get starstruck. It's okay to admire people, but there's no need to get starstruck. We're all just people out here, flaws and all, right? So, that being said, I want you to imagine with me. Let's imagine we're sitting down at Compre, right? Which is why I know you the most from. So we're sitting down together at
Over
Compre.
10 years ago.
Over 10 years ago. Like, yeah, we're both completely different people, right? But we're sitting down at Compre and a little girl in form free, right, just runs over and she's like, Miss Mathurin, I want to be a reporter, what advice do you give to this little girl?
I would say go for it. It's like, like I said earlier, it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And despite, me saying that it's an overworked, underpaid situation and me saying that it's exhausting, if I had the chance, I would definitely do it all over again. I would not say no to the job because of how, like I said, it has its lows, but then when you think of the high points of it, it definitely outweighs the lows.
Right.
But I would say be prepared for what you're getting into. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be like all glamorous. Like I said, people have that perception. But just remember who you are and why you want to do it, because it could be a lot. Sometimes you get there, especially when you're young, and most of us were young when we started. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to get used to. It's a lot getting used to having that level of exposure to different types of people and having that much exposure to people's stories and people's lives. So it's a lot to process, and you kind of have to remember who you are and stay grounded in yourself and not get distracted by all the noise and by everything, especially when you have viewers who, viewers have demands of what they want to see in the news. People want you to cover certain stories. People expect it to be covered from certain angles. So you kind of have to learn to drown all of that out and remember what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah. And now let's remember this young girl, she already wants to do it, but what she really wants from you is kind of like the blueprint. How do I get there? How do I get my foot in the door?
So I would say there's no fixed path. When I look at my colleagues in media, everybody's kind of gone a different route to getting into journalism. So for me, I did do the degree, I did go to school, but there's many of us who didn't do that. So I think I'm one of the few people that actually have a degree in media. So it's not necessarily a requirement. You don't have to go to school to study media to work in media in St Lucia. Mm-hmm. Some people started out doing print media or radio and then graduated to TV. But I think more than anything, it's about going for what you want. So if you know that it's something you want to do, send applications, call up people, remind them that you sent the application. But it's a lot about how you present yourself too. So, you have to give off that confidence, give off that vibe of, you know what you're about and you know what you want to do. So I think there's no space for, like I said, being too shy or being too withdrawn and keep being within yourself too much. You have to be bold, you have to be daring. And we're in a small society, so you could send an application, visit the place, give them a call and say, I want to. Or it's always easier if you have somebody that's already been there. If you know somebody who used to work at a media house, even distantly, call them up and say, I'm interested in this. Can I shadow one of your reporters? Can I do an internship? Because with my company as well, my former company, we did have interns coming in, some young students from South Africa who came in for a few months. So there's always a way to get your foot in the door. I just don't want people to believe that, you have to go off and get a media degree or something like that.
All right. Okay. All right. I think that's very well said. And I think there's a lot of value there for the young listeners who are looking forward to a potential career in journalism. Now, going back to speaking of transition, back in 2019, I was living in Boston, right? It's 2019. I left my firm, sold my car, bought a ticket, ended my lease, and I moved to St. Lucia, right? And I did so for a number of reasons, but let me tell you something. It was not easy, right? There were moments of uncertainty, moments of wondering, am I doing the right thing? If you watch somebody drive away with your car, if you like that car, you might start to have some thoughts. And so you've done a very brave thing in terms of transitioning. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to uncertainty and uh, fear of the unknown. I think it's necessary sometimes for people to step outside of their comfort zone,
Mhm.
to stop and evaluate your life and where your life is and where you want your life to go, and then take some bold steps. Can you speak to your decision there or how it feels?
Um, some days I wake up and I still wonder if I was crazy. I still wonder what the hell took over my mind because I knew it's what I wanted, but it's difficult, especially being 27, this is the time in my life where I expect to be deep into a career and, having it all figured out. And I think for a long time, I was that person that had things planned out and I thought I had to be at certain places at certain times and I had to accomplish certain things by certain timelines that I put on myself.
Right.
So it was very difficult just waking up and deciding, you know what, this isn't working and I need to do something else. But I'm so happy I did it because I've been doing so much better mentally. I'm feeling better physically. And there's so many exciting projects that I've started coming up with and different books that I want to write and just different things. I want to go back and do my master's. So I think I needed to give myself that time away from everything and just step away to be able to see what I really want to do and what I really want. Because it's difficult to know what you want when you're working, working every day and you're stressed and you're tired and you're dedicating so much of yourself to such a consuming job. You don't have that time to really sit and talk to yourself and be like, am I happy? What do I want in the next 5 years? How do I get there?
Yeah.
So as scary as it is to currently not be in full-time employment, which is something I've never actually done for as long as I've been able to work, I've always been working. So it's difficult for me to adjust to waking up and not necessarily having work to do, but it's a beautiful feeling. I'm very relaxed. And I think I really gave myself that space to be creative. So I feel like I have so many ideas now, like my head is just filled with ideas and I'm so excited to work on things. So as much as the uncertainty is scary, I think give yourself that chance, believe in yourself. And it sounds, corny, but just take that leap of faith because you'll never know what you're truly capable of
Right.
unless you push yourself out of that comfort zone.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And let me tell people a secret. I'm going to tell you all from experience, right? You see that first month or that first fortnight when the check does not hit your account.
Ooh.
It's not easy, brethren. It's not easy because
Mhm.
now you have to start saying it's almost like a shock because you get used to a certain cadence to your life. You
Yeah.
get used
Yep.
to a rhythm and like, okay, this, and that, and then I'm going to do this, I'll do this. And, when you break that rhythm now, whether intentionally or not, it is not easy. And I want to take a moment to shout out to all the people who, because of the pandemic, have lost their jobs. We feel you. Stay strong, stay encouraged. We'll be all right. Okay. But yeah, so I really admire that. It takes strength to control your life. Uh, most people, I really believe most people live their lives on autopilot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You get a nice job and then you just get a nice wife or a nice husband. You have nice kids. And then actually there's this engineer that I met at work, and he was about 62 or 63, a very nice guy. I still keep in touch with him. And he just looked at me one day and he was like, let me tell you something. When I was your age, I realized I really don't like this job.
Mm-hmm. That
And
happens.
then, yeah, he said that coming out of that, he just kind of stuck around and he got married, had responsibilities, and he just woke up and he's 63 And he just looks around and he's like, I really never liked this. So here's the reason why I say this, guys. I just want to once again encourage you to take control of your life. And it's not easy. It's not a game for the weak, but it's necessary. Yeah. Now, moving on, I know that you spent some time studying. You mentioned your degree in media, I believe international development.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience? I believe you studied in the UK.
Yeah. I studied in Norwich, a small city in England. It was very exciting, you know, it was a reality check in some ways because I had never really lived overseas. So imagine coming from St Lucia, coming from a place like Bellevue, and you know, being fairly sheltered, and you know, you're used to the same faces all the time, and going to a city where I knew absolutely no one. It was very scary. But again, it's one of those things where you push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I spent 3 years there, and they were 3 amazing years.
Right.
It was difficult, you know, there's the financial challenges, there's the depression, there's the loneliness, homesickness, there's the stress of school. But I made some amazing friends. I learned so much, you know, outside of the classroom, because it's not even just about the degree. I learned so much about different cultures from around the world. I have friends from South Africa now, friends from Nigeria, friends from Palestine, you know, and you get to know a little bit about their culture, their way of life. It really opens your mind. I got to travel a lot around Europe. So there's really exciting opportunities for, you know, if you're studying abroad. It's something that I encourage anybody that has the means to do it to do. It'll be very enriching. It opens up your mind so much, and you look back and you grow so much. I think my mom always says the person I went away as is not the person I came back as. I think I grew so much. It forces you to mature. It forces you to be on your own 2 feet and be independent and just find out who you really are under pressure, especially.
Right. Yeah, I think there's so much value to just living in a completely different culture. Although I think British culture is very similar to St. Lucian culture in some ways, at least. But I think there's a lot of value to that. And also, as you said, speaking to people, being friends with people from a whole different culture, a whole different place. I think what you find there most often is that there are a lot of things that are similar everywhere you go, but there are some things that are very different as well. But it's interesting to me, primarily the similarities that we have across cultures. I find that amazing that human beings just around the world, there's some things that we just lock in on. And I think that's really cool. So moving beyond that, why exactly media and international development?
Actually, I didn't even plan on going to do my undergraduate study. It wasn't something that I had planned out. I left school after A-level and I started working, and then I found that I got a scholarship. So I kind of had to decide, what do I want to study? And it's something I hadn't given much thought to before, but I knew that I liked writing and I knew I wanted to tell stories. So I thought, okay, I could do something in media. I could learn a little bit about media. But I also felt, you know, I had the misconception that you have to do something serious as well. So looking back, you know, I wish I had given myself more of an opportunity to explore other things, but I felt that I needed to pair media with something more practical. So that's where the international development came in, because I always believed, you know, I wanted to travel the world and help people. So, you know, I don't regret it. I love my degree. It's a very unique degree program, especially in the way it's structured. So you get to do a lot of courses under media, practical courses, but you also get to do international development related topics, and you get to do a nice intersection of the two. So you learn how media functions and how media affects politics, how it impacts culture, all of these kind of things. But you know, if I had to say anything to anybody else, I'll tell them, don't limit yourself like I did. Don't think you have to do something serious. If you want to do media, if you want to do film, do media. You know, there's an opportunity for you. You create your own opportunity. So don't be afraid and think you have to do something conventional.
All right. Yeah. Very often people will say things like, passion project, right? There was one time when I started being more active with Ianola Pictures, Caribbean Cadence, a very well-meaning person. She had no malicious intent. We're still friends. We were talking, and she's like, "Oh, so about your passion projects?" And I cringed a little bit because what I told her is I don't see what I do as passion projects. There's a goal, and I really believe that if you are serious about any venture that you undertake, if you're serious about film, from that very moment when you pick up your camera and you're recording, it's serious. It's serious right there because you're serious about it. Okay, so and the thing is, I think where that comes from is the way that we grew up, right? So growing up, people would kind of say that these things are serious because we're limited as Caribbean people, St. Lucian people, in terms of the industries that currently exist, the opportunities that currently exist on the island. And so well-meaning people will tell you, oh yeah, you have to do something serious. Parents will tell their children, you have to find something serious to do. You can do that other thing on the side.
Side, yeah, that's true.
And
I think we're moving away from it. It's a good thing now. I see younger persons going off to study really exciting things, and I'm so happy that our generation at least is moving away from that hold of thinking I have to do medicine or I have to do law, I have to do something like that.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's also a symptom of development. I think what's happening is channels are beginning to open and paths are beginning to become more obvious in less traditional fields. So I'm really excited about that. I'm happy about that. And I'm excited for where the next generation beyond me goes, for sure. Now, before I let you out the door, you mentioned an interest in film, but then I paid attention to passing comment about documentary film. So it sounds like the lean there is more towards investigative journalism, right? Something like that.
I would say more human interest, because I think ultimately I really just want to travel and tell stories. So whether it be writing books or whether it be producing documentaries, I think there's so many interesting people all over this world, right here in St. Lucia. We all know very interesting people. And every time I think of, just getting a camera and just traveling and just interviewing people, I get really, really excited. So I think ultimately that's what I want to do. Write people's stories, bring them to camera as well, and just let people know of all the, good, bad, ugly, everything in the world.
Yeah, my people will talk to your people. We'll figure something out. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. And I'm really excited about how you're going to make your mark in that way. I know that something's going to happen, and I'm looking forward to see what it is. And I really want to thank you for taking the time out to join me here today. Do you have any questions for me?
No, not really. I'm looking forward to seeing your writing soon. That's something I did not know about.
Oh boy. All right. So check it out if you want to there. Folks, as always, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And you would think by now I would look this up prior to the episode and not do this to you all the time. But you're watching this on October 4th. We will be back with another episode of Family Reflections on October 18th. So see you then. For now, take care of yourself. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, everybody.